The 10th State of the Schools in Atlanta event presented September 9th, 2014 on the campus of North Atlanta High School.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the presentation of colors and the singing of the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Telegraph. Halt. Center. Face. Post. Left. Face. Forward. March.
Please welcome Ms. Nancy Meister, Vice Chair of the Atlanta Board of Education.
Good morning. Can you all hear me? Okay. Good morning, and thank you so much for coming to the 10th Annual Atlanta State of the Schools Address. I'm Nancy Meister, the Vice Chair of the Atlanta Board of Education and representative of District 4, which includes North Atlanta High School. I'd like to take a moment to recognize my colleagues on the board. As I call your name, please stand. New to the board this year and the at-large representative for this district is Cynthia Briscoe Brown. Serving as the District 3 Board of Education representative, Matt Westmoreland. And our District 1 representative, Leslie Grant. If there are any other elected officials in the audience this morning, would you please stand and be recognized? Yolanda Adrian, thank you for joining us. 2014 has been a jam-packed, momentous year for the board. We have been and will continue to work diligently with the superintendent to ensure that this year and those beyond are the most rewarding and meaningful years in the lives of our students and families. We are a board committed to success of all APS students. This year, for the State of the Schools, we are doing things a bit different. The Atlanta Partners for Education, which is a joint venture of Atlanta Public Schools and the Metro Atlanta Chamber, is hosting 2 community programs for the first time in the history of the State of the Schools. In addition to this program, an evening event will take place tonight at Douglas High School. At both programs, Superintendent Karstarfin will deliver her message about Atlanta Public Schools. We truly appreciate your participation. Your support is confirmation that we already know. Your presence here confirms what we already know, that countless individuals care about our cities, our schools, our students, and their education. This event could not be possible if it were not for partners and sponsors. I'd like to give a special thanks to our premier sponsors for today's event, IBM and AT&T. They are two of many companies that partner with Atlanta Public Schools through the Atlanta Partners for Education. If the representatives from IBM and AT&T are here, would you please stand? Thank you. Will the dedicated men and women of the Atlanta Partners for Education Board of Advisors also stand, and please remain standing. And now, all of the school district's partners, past, current, future, please stand. On behalf of the board and the superintendent, I'd like to express our sincere appreciation for all that you do and have done for the children of this city. We are so grateful to all of you. We are also fortunate to have Donna Lowry with us. Donna is the education reporter for WXIA 11 Alive. Miss Lowry, will you please stand or wave if you are here? I know that you were running a little late. Oh, there you are. Donna will moderate the question and answer portion of today's event. There are two ways which questions can be presented. The first is by using the index card that has been provided to you when you signed in. Hopefully you wrote down your questions and we'll drop them in the basket that will be circulating. And if not, I'm sure we have some cards here that can be sent through the audience. Or if you submitted a question online, which many of you did, please listen for your question and that will be asked in that manner. The superintendent has not seen any of the questions and has said that she's willing to answer as many of them as time allows. Ms. Lowry will also randomly choose questions, and some of them may be her own. If we run out of time, the administration has committed to collecting all of your questions and posting the answers online. Now let's proceed with the program. Here to represent North Atlanta High School and introduce the superintendent is a senior, Mr. Jose Rodriguez Lopez.
Good morning. Good morning, distinguished guests, friends, family members. My name is Jose Rodriguez Lopez. I'm proud to represent my school and North Atlanta High School, where I'm a member of the class of 2015. When I look back at my time here in North Atlanta, I can truly say that all of my teachers have been inspiring individuals. When my principal told me that I would have the honor of introducing our new superintendent, I first told them that I wasn't nervous at all. That was a lie. I was extremely nervous and almost in tears. It's such an honor. With several performances under my belt, my dream is to one day stand on stage and accept a Tony Award for Best Male Actor. And while I accept my Tony Award, I will say, Hispanics of the world, pursue your dreams like I am doing now, because they are valid. Anyways, that's just a little bit about me. I'm here to introduce the new superintendent. Her name is Dr. Maria Karstarfin. From what I've heard, she doesn't mind being called Dr. C. I've also taken the liberty to read about Dr. Karstarfin. July 7, 2014 was Dr. Karstarfin's first official day as our new superintendent. She serves our school district with great experience, leading many school districts and serving in the executive ranks of high school of education. Atlanta is her third time as superintendent. Previously, she was the superintendent of Austin's Independent School District in Texas. Before that, she led St. Paul Public Schools in Minnesota. She's also served in accountability positions in the District of Columbia, Kingsport, Tennessee, and Columbus, Ohio. Dr. Kostarfin's professional experience includes teaching at the middle school level, as well as elementary education in Senville, Spain, Caracas, Venezuela. She's well known for her leadership and her results. I may not know Dr. Kostarfin, but when I think about her and her position, I think about a personal quote. My name is Jose Rodriguez Lopez, and my life will not be limited by people's discomfort. Now, allow me to address this quote. It doesn't mean that I'm not aware of people's discomfort or that I don't care about it. It's simply a reminder that I won't let people's perspectives and paradigms on life affect where it is I'm going. And that is how I can truly relate to our new superintendent. Her passion for education and students is unlimited. She has hit the ground running here in Atlanta. I think she spends more time at schools and employee meetings and neighborhood town halls than she does at home. When she visits classrooms, her inner teacher comes out very quickly. She treats every encounter like a learning experience, both for herself and for the person she encounters. The point I'm trying to make is that Dr. Kostarfin is fully immersed herself here at APS. She is determined to do what all educators are called to do, and that is to lift students up academically, socially, and emotionally. I would like to welcome her to the APS family. And now, it is with great honor, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our new superintendent of Atlanta Public Schools, Dr. Maria Kostarfin.
Well, don't leave me now. Thought we could do a big bungee jump on the net here. I may actually have to come out there. It's very, you feel very far away, but it's so nice to be here with you this morning. I am so pleased to be the new superintendent of Atlanta Public Schools. It's been a pretty exciting beginning of the school year, and we have a lot of things to kind of go over and talk about as it relates to the state of the district. But before I get started, I just have to say, as the superintendent of schools, you do a lot of things. You go to a lot of schools, you go to a lot of football games, you do a lot of things, even adult things that you sometimes, wish you hadn't done. But I have heard a lot of national anthems in my life. I have heard so many I have lost count. That is the best singing of the national anthem by our student, Bethany Bell, who, I don't know if she's still around, but she has a career, an option in opera. So I also want to thank our ROTC who came through this morning to present the flags. Thank you so much, North Atlanta, for making sure we got off to a great school district type start. So it was also inspiring to see earlier outside. When I walked in, I'm very tired. I have a lot going on. And when I walked in the school for a moment, I thought I was on a movie set. It sounded like a soundtrack from A River Runs Through It or something. But the orchestra was amazing too, so could you please give them a round of applause? They did a great job this morning. I also wanted to thank Joe for coming out today. He and I were sharing some stories behind the stage. But this is a perfect example of another student, an APS student, who has so many hopes and dreams for himself. And this is really what we're going to talk about today, and the state of the district and what it means for us to be able to make things like this more possible for our students. Well, when I started thinking about this particular event, it became clear to me after everybody talked me through the Atlanta history that this is the APS State of the District 10th year anniversary. And so as we started looking through our data and our information about APS, there were a lot of 10s that were coming to mind. Like 1 in 10 students are special education students. We had 8 in 10 students who were living in poverty. 8.5 of our students actually go to our community schools, our APS more traditional schools, but 1.5 of our students are actually now in our charter schools. And over a 10-year period, that is a significant change for the district. And there are other interesting information about how things have looked over the last 10 years. But one thing that is still kind of turning in the system is that when I looked back over the 10 years of state of the districts, we saw a lot of proclamations, if you will, about what the state of affairs were at the time, and then kind of where we are today. And we'll go over those a little bit. But as we think about my 10th week on the job, as I think about all the other celebratory anniversaries and things of the sort, there are other things that have happened in APS that we should be really proud of. We have a relationship with so many people, but one in particular was the Cultural Experience Project, which allows every APS student to be able to get an arts-rich experience at no cost to the student, at no cost to the school, and every student can do that on a field trip every year. They're celebrating their 10th anniversary with APS. Also, 10 years ago, the new schools of Carver were launched, and so that means that the new smaller high schools started 10 years ago, but today, as you'll hear later, you will be able to see how the beginnings of what started as one of the lowest performing schools in the state, North Carver Comprehensive High School, is now one of the most recognized in the country. Just yesterday, making Newsweek's top high schools in America. So if you know people at Carver, please give them a big round of applause. And right here in North Atlanta, you'll find that this is where we started International Baccalaureate. It became one of the first IB programs in the country, in the state, and it started right here for North Atlanta schools. And it's also one of the few articulations in the country that goes all the way from kindergarten to 12th grade and is still clearly going strong. So congratulations to North Atlanta for a great job. Now, in order for us to have a big, long list of more things like this in the next 10 years, I can tell you with certainty that APS has a lot of work ahead of us. When I went into Austin, which had its own set of challenges when I started as superintendent, and it was a district that had also, in the late 90s, gone through a cheating scandal, had gone through its own let's say, setbacks. And even with that district, it took at least 15 years. I think when we counted from the transition superintendent through my tenure, it was a 15-year turnaround. And it still has a ways to go. It's not perfect. It still has, there are gaps between students. We always want more for our kids. But APS is also in the same spot. But what I think we know is that we have to have a quality public school option in Atlanta for our families. In order for us to do that and to accelerate from where we are, so we can make up and catch up and not have to spend 10, 15, 20 years getting where we want to go, it's going to be important that we actually accelerate our efforts, get a little more targeted, and be very thoughtful about how we're going to do it in ways that allow us to take these efforts and have them actually apply tenfold. Now, our students do have their own hopes and dreams, and they are planning for their futures, as you heard Joe earlier speaking about this morning. But as a former teacher, I did come prepared for class. I wanted to give you a little assignment as we're talking today. I wanted you to think back to your own inner child of around, since we're celebrating the 10th anniversary, of around 10 years old. Can you do that? Can you close your eyes? Close your eyes, Jason Estevez. And think of what you were doing at 10 years old. Keep your eyes closed. So your very survival depended on your parents. Your very survival depended on adults around you, your home, your neighborhood, who was supporting you, who was listening to you, who you went to. Okay. We have tons of 10-year-olds in Atlanta Public Schools. Okay, wake up. It's the morning. I got you. You can open your eyes now. Don't fall back asleep. We have tons of 10-year-olds across APS, and we have other students who are, of course, younger and older. But when we think about our own inner 10-year-old selves, we, as adults now, have the responsibility for the 50,000 students in our 106 learning sites who, much like you, at 10 years old, wanted to have people around you who supported you and encouraged you to achieve your own dreams. We have a collective responsibility to serve them. They had some thoughts of their own. We went around schools and talked to students of all ages to share with us what they were hoping for in Atlanta Public Schools. I want you to know that I made a specific point to ask them to cut out anything that might have been scripted or fed to students. I wanted to take all that out so that you could have a more clear picture of the voices of our kids.
I hope I learn something new, and I hope that my teachers will be able to help me, and I'll be that student to help someone who is struggling, and I can bring them up to my level.
My motivation is to come to school as my future. I want to come to school so that I can learn to be prepared for having a job and for, I guess, in the near future, college.
My general motivation would be probably the first person in my family to graduate from high school and then go to college. So my family is basically my motivation to come back every day and show people that it can be possible, it can be done.
So I feel like in my heart that I'm so special because I listen and I learn because I want to become something more in life.
Well, they'll say I'm special because the teachers, they give me an individual learning style that is suitable for me. So every person is different, and they understand that. So if one style works for some kids, it may not work for me.
I want to be a teacher when I grow up.
Our teachers are important because they teach us not only what we need to know, but they also teach us to work together as both individuals and as teams.
360 degrees. If you take anything, rotate it 360 degrees, it will map back onto itself. Map back onto itself.
You're trying to figure out how it all came together, how it was put together. And then upon the third read, we get really sophisticated. And we're talking the why. And what does that mean, the why?
Which side is it?
This side?
Sure, why not? Which side is B?
So that one still looks like we're working on.
Es el pez. El pez tiene un que tiene en la cabeza el pez.
Even bet that it's in the front.
Okay, then you should be showing it to me.
She visited places she'd never been before. Now this page shows lots of nouns.
Whenever I come to school, hope is basically what keeps my day going. I always look forward to learning something in class, learning something, meeting someone.
When I hope for, I want to get an education so I can learn more.
I hope each day is really a better day because for me, I'm at a fast track. I always think, okay, I could do better next day, I could do better the next day.
I want to be the next architect in the world and try to design buildings on the moon. Probably have a water supply on the moon also.
I will be the next pediatrician.
I will be the next technician. I'll be the next professional salesman in the United States.
And I come here every day just to improve myself and to be college and career ready.
School is a great place, and if you don't go, you are making the biggest mistake of your life.
So these are our children, and so we've talked about our children, and I want to spend the rest of our time together talking about our charge and our changes that need to happen in APS so that every student in the district, without prompting, without scripting, from the heart can speak about their hopes, their dreams, and their own futures in their own words. Now, again, as you remember, I asked you to think about your 10-year-old self, and I want you to remember through the rest of the morning that we need to keep our focus on children. And I'll talk a little bit about why that's been kind of hard in APS. But in the meantime, I'd like for you to help me thank our principal here. Oh, I guess not. I wanted to thank Curtis Douglas. Where is he? Oh, there he is in his 10-year-old self. Where is he now? Stand up. You've grown. Thank you so much, Principal Douglas, for having us here today at North Atlanta and for letting us go through all your baby pictures. You were quite a handsome young man. Still growing. But for a little bit of background, I want you to know that, the state of the district, as I looked at it over the last 10 years, it is true. I mean, I know there's been some setbacks, I know there have been some challenges, but it is true that there has been some good and some growth in APS. Us mining out those nuggets and putting those things forward for us to be able to build upon that, that's been a little harder in our context. But it is no secret, we've suffered some setbacks. Now, when we looked at the statements for the last 10 years about the various state of the districts, it ranged from everything from, we're making progress, to we're climbing the hill, to we've almost made it to the mountaintop, to I think, we're almost a model district for the country. And I can tell you a little, as you know a lot of the things that happened since some of those proclamations. And so when I thought about today and the real state of the district, I think it's the time for kind of proclamations is over. And I wanted to spend more time talking about what we all have to do to work so that we can actually get to statements and proclamations about the district that we all believe, that we want to stand behind, and that we don't worry about once it's made the headline in the paper. And so right now, the district is working in a context that is more like recovery. We are rebuilding just about everything, and there are some things that I think have not been actually established for more than 2 decades. There are systems that should be in place that aren't at all. And then there are just common best practices about how you run a good organization, how you hire good people, how you make sure that you're doing good teaching every day that still hasn't quite been nailed clearly for the system. And so we don't have to go through all those things in detail, but pretty much it means that we need to kind of go backwards in proclamations and start it all a little bit over again. And right now, we're at the base of the mountain, and we've got to start our climb again. So across the district, I have met good people. I've actually met great people. And they're coming here, and new ones are coming every day because they want to be part of the recovery effort. And they also really believe in the great city of Atlanta, and they really believe in this as an outstanding American city that we should be proud of. And there are a lot of people in this city that really want to see the hopes and dreams of their children be actualized, and that it's the responsibility of people like you in this room and people like me to make that happen. So as we go forward, there are some things that I've asked the board to do, and there's some things the board has asked the administration to do, and there's some things we're jointly going to ask the school community to help us with as well. But the board, I have to say, out of the box, I probably wouldn't be here today if it weren't for the selection committee itself and the rich diversity of the people who sat at that table looking for its next superintendent. But as soon as that piece of the selection process, phase went through, I actually got to spend more time with the newly elected board. And it feels like to me that it's the first time I've been able to work, and it is a large board. 9 people is a big board. But it's the first time that I feel like 9 people collectively want to work as a board, and not only work as a board, but want to support the district and want to see the very best things for children. So I'm really proud to be part of that. They are parents, they're alumni of the district, they're community advocates, and they also have been former teachers and have a lot of deep knowledge about how schools should work and what it's felt like to be on the front lines. Either as a parent or a teacher, once you've been one of those 2 things, you pretty much get a good sense of what it's like to be in an APS school. So I want to thank my board chair. And we made sure we picked a younger picture. This is Courtney English, and the truth is, he's 2 going on 10. He's 28 now, going on 58. But our board chair, and I also want to thank our vice chair. This is little Nancy before she was Miss Meister. But she also was very enthusiastic about finding her dad to find this picture. So I'm really glad that they very quickly found their inner selves. And I also like to thank the rest of my board members for being here today and for supporting us through very challenging times, but have been very great. But the point here is just to ask that as we think about our mission and vision and where we are, that the board was already well at work when they were, right after they were recently elected. When I met with them in the spring, they were clear. They said that there were things that had to, they were like, we understand that you're in transition. We understand you're still the superintendent in Austin, but there are some things that you got to get fixing on. And if you don't get on it now, and that's how well they understood the school system, if you don't get on it now, we won't have a good day one. And you have to have, you basically have, I'm a student for life. I'm a very good student. I listen, and then I actually don't need to have the experience to believe that it's an important thing to do. So I listened to them, and we started putting some of those things in place. We had 19 vacancies in principals, and in the end, we ended up filling 22. We had other big things happening in individual schools or clusters that were problematic that we were able to put, some systems in place to fix. And then we did the full-on, pull-it-together reconciliation of how do we have a better day one throughout the summer. The great news is as soon as we got step one done around day one and getting the school year started, which, while it wasn't perfect, was much better than previous years, we went back into a retreat with me to talk about mission and vision, our guiding principles, and even throughout the summer, they were already working on board norms so that the way that we behaved as adults at the board table, in the board meetings, out in the public, one-on-one relationships would be strong and healthy. That's what we did during the summer. And then when we started the school year, we looked in our own backyard first, and then we started talking about the rest of the system. So here's some of the work we've been doing thus far with our stakeholders. The board has worked on a mission and a vision, and a mission tells you what you actually do every day. And so our board has, again, worked with the community and the administration, but so far this is the draft we have. Through a caring culture of trust and collaboration, every APS student will be ready for college and career. And then for vision, a high-performing school district where students love to learn, educators work to inspire, parents are engaged, and the community has trust in the district. And I've worked, again, much like I've heard many national anthems, I have seen many vision and mission statements across the country. Most of them are about 2 paragraphs long, and I wouldn't remember them right after I read them. We tried to keep it straightforward, we tried to keep it clear, and we tried to reflect the exact same voice from the community that we heard when we were out talking to people throughout the transition and the summer and the start of the school year. And of course, a lot of our board members were coming right off the campaign trail. So they heard a lot from the community too, and they felt like they really did have an understanding of what the community was hoping for. Now, I need you to move that for a second. I'm going to do a quick test. What does a mission do? You can't sit in my front row and not answer. I know, you're the teacher of the year, but go ahead. What does a mission do? We can't hear you. Stand up and use your, yeah. Yes. What does the mission do? The mission is what we do every day. What is the vision? Where we're going, what we aspire to be, okay? And who are we focusing on? The what? Okay, just want to be sure we're still good. The 4 E's are something that you should be used to seeing in Atlanta. These are the guiding principles that the board still believes are the voice of the community and what APS really should be doing every day to guide how we do our work. All right, so it's the overarching behavioral norms that the organization is going to be working under. All right, next slide. So we've got some big direction from the board about vision and mission and big pieces, but now it's the administration's job to figure out the strategic direction. And it can't be something that we pull out of a hat. It has to be based in research. It has to be based in knowledge. It has to be based in other things that we've heard both quantitatively and qualitatively about the district. And our strategic direction is in a logic model. I'm not going to ask you to try to read all of that, but what was really important is that you understand a little bit about what it looks like. And so the concept works like this. You have big buckets that are driven by where we aspire to be. And if we are working towards something really large in a system this big, what are the things we have to be working on? And then if we do this, then we'll be able to achieve our mission. So in academic programming, we really must have, it's kind of like, think of it like it's bookends. You have to have at the beginning the rigorous standards-based curriculum, and you've got to be in alignment with the state, or when you do the assessment, you will not match on the back end. But we start with that. On the other end of that bookend, it's point number 2, the talent strategy. And of course, it's all employees, but if you think about what we do as our core purpose around educating children, you start with that high quality, rigorous, standards-based curriculum based in everything that we expect children to know and be able to do. And then on the other end, you've got to have high quality people who know their content, can teach, love children, and want to be in APS. Haters are not allowed. Then we will get well-rounded students who can be holistically supported, and every child can then go to college and career. Our talent strategy isn't just about the teachers and the principals in schools, it's about every employee in APS. We want people who love being around children. And I can tell you, I'm gonna get to culture in a second, but the people piece, we are an organization of people. We don't make anything. And so we live and die by the people we hire every single day. And if they aren't great, then we have a challenge. Systems and resources is pretty broad. This is one where I think we have actually struggled a lot. This is where I said from 20 years ago, we didn't necessarily have all the people that we needed in place, all the systems that we needed to have in place to be able to run a quality school system. But in the systems and resources piece, I can say that it's going to range from making sure that we have HR structures and finance structures that talk to each other so we can count how many people work for us every day. But it goes from HR to information, and you don't have to ask too many people, to HVAC systems. Like every kind of system has a bit of a challenge in APS. There's nothing that's been running super tight. So getting those systems running tight and well is another piece of the strategy so that everyone can assume that how the things are supposed to function and work will be working, and you're not busy trying to grab your principal and grab your custodian to come fix the leaking roof or get the air conditioning on in 110-degree weather. You get to just focus on what you're supposed to do in your job. And for teachers, it'll be teaching. For other people, it'll be something else. But all those systems have to work. And then the culture piece about fostering the caring culture of trust and collaboration. I've been in APS, I've read, every day, there's something that happens in APS, and some things can be quite challenging, if not horrible, toward children. And that culture of how we communicate to each other in nonviolent ways is going to be essential for the district to turn itself around. The way it works right now is something happens at 0, and it accelerates to 100 before you know what happened to you. And we've been trying to address those things. So we have some simple things in place. I talked about one at the board meeting last night, having an employee relations department where people can come with issues before they get out of hand. Community relations department, where you can go to an ombudsman, bring any issue from the community, and we can figure it out and navigate the system for you, because it's so difficult to work your way through APS right now. Until we clean those things up, we have to have some stopgap measures and some best practices in place to do that. But all of those things, whether it's academics, systems, or culture, really depends on that talent strategy. And speaking of talent strategy, I've got to talk about a couple of people. I wanted to acknowledge a couple of our teachers. Miss Rita, would you like to stand so they can see what you look like today? I love your hair, though. It's adorable. This is our Teacher of the Year. She's from Cleveland Avenue Elementary School. Thank you so much for being with us today. You're not alone in your outstanding teaching and everything else. Don't cry. It grew out. It grew out. We also have Miss Tiffany Stembridge. Where is she? Please stand, turn around. I wanted to acknowledge Ms. Stembridge because not only is she a dynamo teacher, she is probably one of the few teachers who has actually had success in coordinate algebra. Has everybody heard about, would you like to tell people the components of coordinate algebra? And some probability too, right? Right. So, and math is our area where we have the greatest, scariest concern. That is where the gaps, I went over the year-end achievement summary data with the board last night. That is where you see the biggest gaps in APS. And so our students are expected to know more in ways that we didn't learn, that was organized differently than when we were in school. And I don't know if you saw this this study in the summer, but I'm sure you read it 20 times over. I think the title was Why Americans Stink at Math. Hey, did you see it? It's it came out, I think, in July this summer. But the researcher basically, says that the reason why Americans stink in math, is that we've had far too many different programs around math, and that we haven't consistently implemented anything. And so Georgia is like a lot of other states in the country, right, where math has changed in Georgia, I think 3 times. It may change again in 15, 16. And there are other states where it's changed more, right? And so the premise of this entire research piece is that if you could get some consistency, right, if you could get agreement around how you're going to do it at the appropriate grade levels and do it consistently, we could all learn math. And math is something that everybody can learn, but we really do need to be able to teach it in consistent ways. And so you are at Carver, Washington, where we were yesterday with Ms. Obama and others. So thank you so much for being here. You did a great job. You did a wonderful job. I also want to say that we have other folks who have done their jobs, and they're not classroom teachers, but they are frontline just the same. And whenever, we always say this, the first teacher is where? At home. Sometimes the second teacher is the what? The bus driver. It might be what else? The crossing guard might be what else? Cafeteria worker. It's a few more steps before you get into the classroom. So I'd like to acknowledge a couple of people who have done an amazing job for APS over the years. Ms. Jacqueline Thomas, please stand. She is the most beloved school bus monitor in the district. People actually ask for her. I know you got a little fan base, big fan base. I also want to acknowledge Mr. Roy Talley, who is a custodian at Forest Hill Elementary. Turn around, 18 years in the district. Does a beautiful job, The night custodians probably don't have anything to do. And then, of course, our 30-year veteran cafeteria manager at Perkinson Elementary School, Miss Cassandra Jackson. She told me earlier she wasn't going to give a speech, but I just wanted to let you know that, that all of them have been great educators for APS, and we want everyone like this in APS. We want everyone, even if you wasn't before, that's fine, that's in the past. If you want to be today, you're still welcome in APS. If you don't want to do that today, you're probably not going to be happy working under this superintendent. But we welcome all the people who want to be just like you, and so thank you for being here today. You've done just a great job. And just another piece of the state of the district that's a reality for us is the conversation we've been having about our flexibility options and operating models for the district. We're like many other districts across the state of Texas, Georgia, where all 180 school systems have to pick which model they're gonna use. We have until June 30th of 2015. We've been updating our board at every board meeting. We've been doing lots of town halls and lots of community meetings about it. But if you haven't been involved in that, you really need to do that to get informed, because these are things that will dramatically change the way we do business depending on where we land. And what we made a promise to each other about, even though probably contrary to the conspiracy theorists of education, we haven't chosen a model. And we really wanted to take the time to do some of our bigger visionary thinking around where we want the district to be before we would decide what we want to do. But we have a couple of different approaches we could take, and depending on how much or little we want from the different designs, APS could be very similar to what it is today or very different. And if it's different, what I want to say about kind of the state of the mindset in the district is that I don't think people have fully internalized what that might mean. I mean, that might mean like we literally don't have certain departments if we're going to, move them closer to the school site level. Or we only have departments if it's a value from the school site level. And there's a lot of other things in between. So, there's a lot to consider in this decision, but we need to have our plan so we can budget appropriately. Now, I think that the public did its part. I think that the public had a lot to say in the last election. And they elected a board that, at least for me, is a great match for what I hope and dream about when I think about my job, when I think about where I want it to be, and when I think about what I feel like is the right environment to work in so that I can do the right kind of work for children. I think the board is doing its part. It took that charge very seriously. They've stepped up to the challenge. I probably talked to 1 or 3 or 5 of them just about every day. And unlike other experiences where that can feel very burdensome, there's hardly a call or an exchange that doesn't help me do a better job. I mean, like it's never about political agendas. It's never about a personal agenda. It's never about, can you do this for me? Or it's never about that. And I can tell you that is we have just such a beautiful, fragile moment in APS. And if we just keep building on things like that, those things that feel fragile will become our strong base. But I've been encouraged. I've been deeply encouraged about this. And I think that now that we have the leadership piece kind of settled, we are working to recruit, retain, promote really good people, that we need to do the next step and reach out more for the community to help us in what we're trying to do. And so there are things that I think we need to think about as a city that our children are depending on. Things like, how do we have safer environments for them to come to school before they get there? How do we make sure that even our buses on the road are more safe and children can just get from their homes to schools? And these are big operational things. I also, as the board talked about last night, that we wanted to think more about how do we eliminate the achievement gap even before it starts with early childhood education. And the board talked a little bit more last night about wraparound services. How is it that we ensure that every kid, regardless of how they come through our schoolhouse gates or their zip code, has an opportunity to get all the other supports they need so that when they go into the classroom, they can really focus on learning. So in closing, when I think about my 10-year-old self, I just remember the greatest fear in the world I had was disappointing my parents. I mean, the thought that I would do anything that would give you that look would just break my heart. And then I was terrified that then my grandparents would find out about it. And then if they figured out about it, then of course my world would just come apart at the seams. So, and I'm like a grown old person now, and I worry every day that, I'm going to do something that my parents wouldn't be proud of as I sit in this job. And so I'm sure that everyone in this room, as they think about their 10-year-old self, there was something that they kind of feared, but that respect fear, that kind of kept you on the straight and narrow. And even if you did slip a little bit, you felt a little bit of guilt because you were hoping that person never knew what you did. And in this position today, I still think about those things with my parents, but my biggest concern for APS, when I take myself out of the role and I look at the whole organization, I think that some pieces of APS being ready for the change are in place. There are many things that aren't, but this is our only opportunity right now. And I think if we don't grab it and hug on to it and wrestle it to the ground and plant it and grow it and do those things, we will have missed the greatest opportunity for this district to do a real turnaround and be the district that Atlanta, in its 10-year-old self, would hope and dream for its city. I hope that you really consider that. Think about what your behavior, thinking, and experience has been with the district, the people that you know that can help us make a difference, and that we do put any of those distracting agendas aside so that we can really focus on what? The children. And if we focus on the children and if we make our decisions about the children, every single time, I can tell you with absolute certainty, we will never go wrong. We will never go wrong. We will never have to look over our shoulders. We will never worry about the quality of our data or our intent. And when those things happen, beautiful things happen for children, and this city will be so proud of us, and we will never disappoint again. So thank you so much for being here today. I look forward to answering your questions. I'd like to invite out to our stage a dear, dear friend of the district, our moderator, Donna. You too have grown. Welcome. Have a seat.
Thank you. Oh, my 10-year-old self, huh, Superintendent?
The sailor outfit even.
Let's get to the questions, because yes, I can talk about myself a lot and got in a lot of trouble for that my 10-year-old self did. James Delano for Teach for America. Is APS currently struggling to staff at any specific locations?
Well, when we started, that was one of the charges that the board gave in our first retreat in April. And I was very quick to move on a new and very seasoned human resource officer, Pamela Hall, who understands what it means to staff large urban pre-K through 12 systems. We did not have a challenge at individual schools. We were short about 10 teachers, and I asked the same question, like, so what does that look like? Is it 8 teachers at one school and just 2 somewhere else? But it was more of the hard-to-fill positions like special education or subsets within special education. But it was the hard-to-fill positions. It wasn't really at one particular school when we started. What I've now seen, since we're a month into the school year, is that as we've tightened our processes about behavior, about culture, about high expectations, that we have already had to make some personnel changes, and at some particular schools, not one in particular, but at particular schools, I'm starting to see some patterns of where perhaps previous leadership at the schools have been more relaxed about their hiring standards, and we've had to make transitions already during the school year. But it's going to be a bit of a churn still until we get the right kind of people in our schools that we trust and believe are good for children.
So you wouldn't call it struggling to staff, just
not
some
struggling to
little
staff,
pockets.
but there's some areas that I think are just hard in general for every school district. But refilling positions after you start the school year get tougher because people have already started in other districts. And I think that's what my concern is right now, just being able to find really quality teachers as we have transitioned others out that don't meet our standard today.
Okay. Well, I have a question here from someone from this area. Patricia Israel is with the North Atlanta Parents for Public Schools, NAPS, and she says she wants to know what changes are needed at a state level in order for you to create a district where all students can achieve budget, additional state requirements, what kind of things?
At the state level, you know, I just came out of a district where the state superintendent's commissioner's office was very aggressive, and and the legislature had a lot of influence over the schools. And Georgia does too, but it's slightly different. I mean, it's a much easier relationship here. You can talk pretty candidly about APS issues, and I can't speak for the whole state, but and they've been very helpful, actually. I mean, I've been impressed by the willingness of the staff to at least give us an opportunity to fix some things. But I think every state has a tendency to do unfunded mandates, and typically every session there's more layered on top of more things, and we end up not having enough, resources to redirect quickly. It's a bureaucratic type system, so it's very hard to work through particular grants based on the way they do funding and things of that sort. So unfunded mandates are always a challenge. I think changes, just giving stuff time to stick and time to grow teachers is always a challenge. So that, like I said, the math potentially changing again in 15-16, and the pain has really been at the high school level here in Georgia. I mean, it's been a lot of changes at the high school level. So I think that is something that we could possibly advise on. And then there'll be things, because APS has had its own unique experience in Georgia with our charter and some other things, that I think for APS, there are some individualized district issues that if we could work through might set up our system better, but I think it would be unique to APS given our charter.
Okay. This one is from Elaine Burtis Elder with Illuminations. She said, I would like to understand why the state of Georgia has determined that we need to change the structure of our schools to one of the three choices, and you alluded to this earlier, they've given us. What research have they done to determine that this will improve our schools, and why have they given us so little time to make this decision? It's a long one.
I don't know the answer to that one. She didn't give me these questions in advance.
She had not seen this.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that, every administration has their views about how they want to see the state. That's what, that's why you have a leader of the state. I mean, I'm not one to judge because, people get elected. They are elected by the people, and, and that's what they believe that they were charged to do. But I've worked in enough states. I mean, I don't know about all that stuff with Georgia, but I will say the part about the timeline, love it or leave it. The truth is, I think it's been about 5 years, right? Somebody who can have. It's been about 5. Where's Angela? 5 years. APS has done an APS thing where they took a little. We've taken a lot of time. The board, there were reasons for that. There was. Everybody knows the history of Atlanta right now. There was a lot of challenges going on in the district. There was a change coming in the board. There's a new board coming on, a new superintendent. So instead of just, letting, I think, other people decide, folks kind of kicked the ball down the road a little bit and said, well, whoever ends up being the future of what APS is supposed to be, then they can start the work. There was a little work done last year. So I had some breadcrumbs to get started on, but I don't think the timeline was as bad until APS. We just had to wait longer than others. We talked to the state about that. I still think that they're trying to be very open-minded. They're trying to help Atlanta. And because of that, while we still have to do our work, I think we can be honest with them, and they will just be honest with us back about what kind of flexibility, if any, they're willing to give us. And then the other thing I'll say is that I've worked in enough states to know this, that states don't make and break school systems. They really don't. It's your community. And if you want it to be great, you can figure out the model you need to do and still do it, and it will not mess up a single thing. The research is clear. You want to talk about research? We need great teachers and great principals in our schools every single day. And we need to get focused as a central administration on how to support schools, so we're pushing everything from the bottom up so that our kids and families can get the support they need. And so if you do that, no matter where you sit in public education, no matter what model you're in, you will always do a great job.
Okay. Thank you. This question from Judy Bozarth. What are your plans for increasing high school graduation rates, and in what time frame?
Well, this is something, I think this is a point of pride for APS, and I want to tip my hat to Errol Davis for trying to, and he didn't have a background in K through 12, but he sure tried to understand the graduation rate issue. And our former Chief Academic Officer, Karen Walden, did a great job in this area with, at the time, our executive directors, who are now our associate superintendents for schools. Those three big buckets of administrators, along with high school principals, did have a conversation about what were some of the practices in place that were actually barriers to children being able to graduate on time. They removed some of those barriers, started putting in things that I do fully support, and then we plan on expanding on alternative pathways for graduation, credit recovery, encouraging students to do dual credits so that they are not only working on their high school diploma, but get thinking about college. All those things that they were doing to change that culture. And I think it opened up or cracked the door for us on graduation rates. I think it improved on his watch in 1 year by almost 6 percentage points. They did and of course it's not where it needs to be, but they did a great job in trying to get some real traction there in a very short period of time. First, I do plan on continuing to support that. I think they were spot on in that work. And then, like I said, we're expanding those opportunities across all the schools and making sure that we have some kind of consistency and support for every high school student. But we did hire for the first time. We changed our structure a little bit for associate superintendents. And so instead of being cluster-based, or maybe I should say regionally based, we tried to hire people based on expertise. So we have 3 elementary associate superintendents, 1 for middle school and 1 for high school. Timothy Gadsden, Dr. Gadsden, who came with me from Austin, has had an outstanding record in Florida, Texas, and has joined me here in Atlanta to be the head of our high schools, and really understands that work. Was one of the hamsters behind the wheel with us in Austin. And I do credit him for helping us get our graduation rates up to 84.1% in Austin, over 83% for, or about 83% for African Americans. And I think those things are possible, but you have to put those systems in place, and you have to get the kids in there with support. And so those are just some of the things we'll be doing, but no superintendent does this alone, and I got to give credit where credit's due. It takes a lot of people to move those grad rates and reduce those dropout rates, and attendance is another piece. Our communications department did an outstanding job running a full-on political campaign for attendance, and our day one efforts made a big difference, because we can't help them if they're not there. So I think between attendance, those credit recovery, college-bound thinking programs and supports, and making sure that our students are actually getting their credits and staying on task with credits by grade level will make a huge difference for our grad rates.
Yesterday, the First Lady talked about the early college over
she sure
at
did.
Washington High School, and then early
our beautiful
college.
teacher.
That's right. Let's go on to another question. This is from David Schaefer with the Latin American Association. He asks, how is APS working to ensure a welcoming environment for Latino students and their families? What role does or should the APS play in shaping compassionate dialogue around difficult topics such as immigration?
Yeah, that was a very difficult topic in Texas.
Yeah.
But it's something, a couple of things. Let me talk about the students first. One of the things that just happened when I walked in, I'm so used to a culture where diversity is embraced and sort of like infused in everything you did. So when I picked up the program, our program for today, the front had the 10th anniversary. I flipped it over to read it in Spanish, but that's not what we do here, you know. So it's and I worked in St. Paul where we didn't have an ethnic majority, and everything was in Somali, Hmong, English, and Spanish. So I think, certainly given our numbers and the growth in the student groups, that APS has some work to do around diversity and sensitivity for growing populations. And we do have families that speak multiple languages across the district. But one way to make things more welcoming is to actually be able to communicate with people in ways that they recognize, and that is in part their home language. So we have some work to do in that area, in outreach and in our communication style. And so those are a couple of things we have to work on. We have an ESOL department that has been grossly underfunded and needs a lot of support. This is a district that could easily have very strong dual language programs. We have some schools that are working in that direction, but they haven't had full, complete support. And then I'll say around immigration, I just think for our district and for urban districts where you have such diversity, that once a child comes into our public school system, they're ours. I mean, I don't care how they got here. That's not my business. So once they come into our schools, they are required to go to school. Once they come into our schools, we should do everything in our power to ensure that they graduate and that they're able to continue being a successful resident and future citizen in our country. And so, and that happens because we fully embrace them and give them the same high quality, resources and supports that we would give any other child in our district.
Okay, thank you. This from Dexter Warrior, T. Dallas Smith and Company. How will APS?
This is a lot of pressure.
I know.
This is a lot of pressure. I'm going to phone a friend.
How will APS serve as a stronger catalyst throughout the community to encourage the importance of early childhood education, 0 through 5,
Yay.
So that we have a greater percentage of kids ready to hit the ground running at pre-K?
Yay. I'm a staunch early childhood. The greatest thing that ever happened, one of the reasons I really wanted to go to St. Paul, Minnesota is that's a state that did a lot of early research in areas that we struggle with all over the rest of the country, whether it's charter schools or early childhood education. I mean, Minnesota birthed a lot of these new notions, and they were doing early childhood when it just wasn't cool. Like no one really knew, or they were doing the research, but it had not caught on across the country. So I'm an avid reader of Art Rolnick and his work from the Federal Reserve about the rate of return of every dollar invested in early childhood education. I was really pleased to work with outstanding foundations like the McKnight Foundation that had spent, its lifetime basically as a foundation investing in things like this. I was really proud to see the Minnesota legislature do things like, fund a comprehensive strategy for how to think about doing early childhood for the entire state. In Texas, however, it was the absolute opposite. We took $18 million off the top of our budget just to fund early childhood and made no apologies for it. I think maybe we got like $300 and something thousand from the state total each year for it. But we made our investment. They used to invest a little, but then they cut back a lot when in the budget reductions. So my hope for Atlanta Public Schools is that we just start. I know the board will need a permanent funding stream. If you open that door, you better be fully committed, because trying to bring that back in is not really possible. And doing expansion and making it available to any parent is a pretty big notion. And so, and everything in APS is more expensive. So while I had a district twice the size in Austin, it was $18 million. We're half the size here, but knowing APS, it probably cost us about the same to really get, for the salaries we pay and the approaches we take, it'll still be a very expensive proposition. So I just encourage the board to find a permanent funding stream, that we get the very best researchers and people working with us, and that we take, and there are a lot of people in the legislature, even here in Georgia, that have been talking about this issue, and that we have those legislators really consider Atlanta as a test site or a pilot site to do more expansive work. But we talked about this just last night, and I do think this is something that the city can do. I remember when I interviewed Early and met with the mayor and others, there were two things that he talked about: early childhood and helping children get scholarships to go to college. And I hope those are two things that we'll be able to do as a city together still.
Okay. Got a couple more questions. This one, Cheryl Kortemeyer, Corporate Volunteer Council of Atlanta. How can the corporate community better support APS going forward?
You know, I think the corporate community is gonna, that's so lovely.
That's the bell?
Yeah, it's like, class, go to class.
That is nice. Maybe they don't run into each other in the hallways either. They're just polite. That's nice.
This school is so cool. I did not have high school like this. My high school was like, oh gosh, so challenged compared to this beautiful building and lovely bell system. Yeah. What was the question?
The corporate community supporting
right.
APS. I know we were lulled almost to sleep.
I know.
It was wonderful.
Yeah, so you know, the corporate community in Atlanta, I feel for them. They've been through a lot too with APS. They want to be helpful. They were incredibly generous in trying to help us in the transition. Like I said, no superintendent does it alone. I could have done a lot of different things to approach coming into this district, but the one thing I said was, I can't do it all and I don't have all the expertise. So I need to be able to keep the best people in APS, and I need help recruiting others that would be a good match for the team that we're trying to build. So without knowing me, and having gone through a lot with APS just recently, they didn't ask many questions and they didn't try to control me and tell me what to do. They helped us with the transition. But I want the corporate community to help, probably setting aside the district a little bit and maybe just asking for more support around the children, and taking a different approach to give them some space and to give the district some space, and let people get comfortable with how that relationship might evolve over time. But I'd like to, I've met so many great people. I know Ann Kramer was the head of the search committee and has become has been a good friend of the district and has been really good to me. But I think helping with things like early childhood or helping with things like college scholarships directly to children might be the right approach for where we are today. And that APS, in response to that, does a better job of utilizing the resources we already have and utilizing our grant funds, federal and state, better, and using the tools we have available to us to do more of our day-to-day work and asking for a different direct support to students from the corporate community as we try to rebuild trust together with Atlanta.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge that Antoine Everhart Chappelle from North Atlanta High School Partnership also asked that same type of question, like at the school level, getting these partnerships together, how do you develop those healthy partnerships? So you've mentioned a few of those
Yeah,
things.
and I think the other part, I mean, we're a district, I mean, there's a lot of things I don't understand about APS, but I've just made a list. I've stopped torturing myself. But one of the things is like, we don't really have, I know what I'm looking for. It's like a partnership it's like an office, and it's not, people always assume, or their idea of like corporate partnerships is like, we need a grant, we need some money, we need, it's do this, do that. But the best partnerships I've had, and the ones that I've been in love with, and that, I'm telling you, like weepy leaving Austin love, was with my Chamber of Commerce, and while I can't even say we never hardly agreed on much of anything except the end goal. We wanted more kids going to college and career. And when we got focused on the children, it was like laser-like delivery. And that, for all the challenges you might have, that was such a beautiful thing. So they would do things like, financial aid Saturdays. Really pull out the stops. Help families year after year after year. Really help us track our data about college readiness. Stayed on top of our grad rates and asked really good questions and got in there, got their hands dirty, and attended our meetings and really worked with us. But the partnership wasn't always about where's the grant. It was when good times and bad, you could be really honest with each other and be in partnership to solve a problem. And sometimes that could be fixed with money, but most times it required like people coming together with skill sets to work through issues that would better serve children.
Okay. I'm going to get a couple more in, a couple quick ones, I hope. Please comment, this is from Greg Hawkins. Please comment on the opportunities and issues with our 2 single-gender schools. So that would be Best and Coretta Scott King.
Yeah, we've got to do some resetting at the schools, particularly Best. It was the way, when I went back and looked at the data about those schools, I'm just talking about the boys' school because that's the one I've been following the most. The original design was, and this is what we learned in Austin too, once you nail that design, you've got to stick to it. Too many changes again, because these are typically schools that can pull from all over the district, you've got to stay true to that core design. Without it, and changing it, which is what APS has done a lot over the years, has just made it very difficult for the school to be successful. And then the placement of the schools and different things then spilled over into other schools. And so I don't have a good answer for that one. Those 2 schools are going to need much more work and perhaps some redesign that takes you back to more of the original design.
Okay, all right then. Here's one that's interesting. I think it's Elise Watley, Growing Leaders. You talked at South by Southwest. I'm pretty impressed by that.
Social emotional
About
learning.
the importance of social emotional intelligence and how important it is in the culture of a school. How do you plan to teach social emotional intelligence in Atlanta Public Schools?
I've got a big thing on culture. We got a big piece on culture. It can be taught. There's lots of great research. What
is it first for some of us?
First, I just wanted to say there's an institute. It's the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. It was kind of a spin out of the University of Chicago. And it was all during that time where people were talking about emotional intelligence and leadership and things of that sort. But when you take that to a school-based level, what you're trying to actually do is teach the skills, and these people refer to them as soft skills and some other things, but they're actually like real skills. They're not very soft at all. Real skills about how students are able to manage and engage in healthy relationships, how to ask questions that support you as a learner, how to be able to solve issues, problems, and conflicts in nonviolent ways, to be able to develop a skill set that allows you to understand things like empathy and engagement, and it's a legitimate body of research, and we fought very hard in Austin. I think it was part of why we were able to see the turnaround that we saw. We were chasing test scores like crazy, like those, I forget those dog races, or that little rabbit thing. I mean, we were constantly chasing the tail of the rabbit and never really getting there, and it was very frustrating, and it created a very toxic culture. When we decided to focus on the whole child, bring some of these elements not only into the business for children, but into the day-to-day business of how we behaved as adults. It took a lot of temperature out. We knew the test was going to be there, but we were able to actually do more around not just the skills, but then how do we make time for the fine arts? How do we bring more time for athletics and other, co-curricular opportunities for students? It really, I think, opened up our mindset about how we should be doing education for every child in a different way that most people believe is common sense. But given the way things happen, we double block, we triple block, we do not triple block, but we do double blocking and remediation so much that we just lost our way a little bit. And then, but this kind of brought us back home, and certainly I think it's not, nirvana, but when done well, it definitely makes a difference for kids. I mean, just on the little bit on the research, not only for social emotional learning, there's some meta-analysis out there. The jury's still out. There's some critics of the approach as well, but the co-curricular piece, I think, is undeniable. When students have 3 years of arts-rich experiences, the graduation rate shows double-digit improvements. When students have experiences like athletics-rich experiences, they go to school more. And this is for all student groups, especially children in poverty, double-digit, like 20 percentage point type things, improvements in their graduation rates and attendance and things of that sort. So we know it makes a difference. But we typically, and don't ask me why, are in our organizations, when things get tough or things get hard, those are the things we go after first, and we cut those things out and try to get down to business. And kids aren't feeling it. They don't love us for it. They don't like it. And their reaction to it is disengagement or I don't come anymore.
Social emotional intelligence. I love that. Okay, well, we've run out of time.
Oh,
I think that was a good time. Well, was that tough? Was that tough? You did
I've
a great
got a
job,
question for
didn't
you.
Okay.
What's your big takeaway from today?
I love it.
What do you think is the state of the district?
I think my big takeaway is that there's a lot of hope, and there's a lot of excitement, and there's a lot of forward thinking, and a synergy and energy going on with Atlanta Public Schools. So I'm excited to be a part of it and watch it happen. Yeah, how about you? I think so.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great day.
We've run out of time. So thank you, Dr. Karstafen, for your leadership. I'd like to thank the audience for your attentiveness and participation. But now, quickly, we're going to turn to a wonderful woman. You mentioned a good friend to all of us, a good friend to education. Yes, Ann Kramer, Chair of the Atlanta Partners of Education, for closing remarks.
Thank you, Donna, and especially to you, Maria Karstafen, our superintendent. It has been such a joy for me, and I know for those who are part of our search committee who are here, our school board members that are here, all of our Atlanta Public Schools staff, and especially our community who cares so much about you personally and about the success of the children. And I am just about to burst, both with pride, delight, and, as you said, Donna, with hope. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You provided for us not only the focus is on what? The children, as well as the kind of charge and the challenge and the change that we all face, but most the aspiration for every child from cradle to career to be all that he or she can be. And you have brought that back to us within the vision, the aspiration, and the sense of hope. So thank you. And as you said, I always love this too, the perfect segue is that it does take the community to come together in support of the district and the children, which does start often in community at pre-birth through to career and life. And we are proud at the Metro Atlanta Chamber, and I'm so proud to see you, Hala and Katie, and all of our colleagues from the Atlanta Chamber who make the visible evidence that the Chamber and the business community is ready to do what is required, what it takes, and more to sustain the success of the students. So the students are a part of now a 35-year relationship between the Atlanta Public Schools and the Metro Chamber called the Atlanta Partners for Education. And I always like to remind everyone that the partners are indeed business and civic and community leaders, faith-based leaders, parents, all the folks within our community who want to support education. So with that, APFE has so much. It becomes a door for anybody to be involved in a supportive way to begin to realize the aspirations. We'd love for all of you to participate with us on November the 6th for our Project for a Day, where we can get involved in that very visceral and visible level at local schools on projects. So please visit our website, atlantapartnersforeducation.org, all one long name. And on behalf of Atlanta Partners for Education and the Metro Chamber, we just say thank you, thank you, thank you. A special thanks to Mr. Douglas. I don't know if he's still here. Yes, Mr. Douglas, thanks so much, and all of our North Atlanta staff. To my colleagues from IBM and AT&T, we cry when we come in here. Where's Nancy? It's our building. But it's best use for kids. But we're so grateful for North Atlanta to host us. And as Nancy said, the district, and I do think it's you, Dr. C, who had the brilliant idea of having from the beginning of the day to the close of the day to provide for all people to come. This afternoon there will be a second showing of the State of the District at Douglas High School. So please join us this afternoon at Douglas High School. It makes such a difference. It's at 6 o'clock. So yes, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you for being here. Tell your friends about this afternoon if they can get here. But as we recall, as we move forward in hope, we begin where we end where we start. What's the focus of the work? The children. Have a glorious day. Thanks so much.